Hello, hello, hello. I see people are funneling in now. We're starting on time, which is good. Emily, I don't know if you're a punctual person. I usually am right on time to things, and so we're getting started on time, which is great. And see, folks kind of funneling in now. So if you are here for the underwater basket weaving course, that actually is next hour. Emily teaches that too. If you didn't already know, she's not just a financial planner, but grateful that you're here. I'm Cole with Move Health. Couple just ground rules as we get started. Yes, we are recording the session. Yes, we will send it to you. Secondary to that, if you have questions or things along those lines, feel free to use that Q&A functionality. If you've got a comment you want to share, feel free to drop it into the chat functionality. I'm sure we'll see all of the Fireflies, note takers, and Otter AI and Jump and all those things that pop in too. But feel free to use that. I'd love to, if you all want, as we get started, feel free to just drop in where you're tuning in from. Right, so put that in the chat. That's helpful for us to know where you're at and if you've heard of us and all of those things. And so, Josie's even dropped in there, which team are you rooting for in March Madness? And so I'm Cole. I'm the co-founder and head of growth here at Move Health, the highest rated and largest healthcare planning software for financial advisors. And so I'm really, really excited to have Emily on the call with us today. And so Emily, you're going to share, about going from paralyzed to prepared and how you guide clients through big, scary decisions. I know that there is so often, a financial advisor is not just a financial advisor. You're also a tax strategist and a healthcare planner and an estate planner and a therapist at times, right? And so, Emily, I'm really, really excited for today's conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I think that healthcare planning is such an important piece of what we do because that is a big part of where clients get paralyzed, where they're scared. We can talk to clients about all of these different topics, but sometimes making a healthcare decision can feel really scary. So, when Cole already knows this information, but I've been so happy with and so excited about the relationship that we have with Move Health. When I go look for other partners, I literally ask the question, who's the Move Health of like PNC planning or other things like that, just
Love
because
it.
the operation there has been so great for our team. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in my slides if that works for you.
Yeah, let's do it. We're excited to get started. I'll kind of sit on the sidelines, but I might pop in and pepper a question or two at you, Emily. But without further ado, Emily's going to take it over from here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to see you all. So I am a partner and senior planner at Archer Investment Management. We're a small RA, fully virtual. So every single client that we work with is a virtual relationship. That's also what caused me to want to find new partners in the last few years. So I operated for the first 15 years of my career in one location, and I had a healthcare broker relationship with my local person. And I started to branch out and take on virtual clients all over the country, I now have clients in 24 states. And so for me, I had this headache of trying to go out and find healthcare and Medicare planner relationships in these different cities. And as Cole knows too, this is so different state to state, city to city. And even in Florida, it can be completely different across the street from your neighbor, when it comes to healthcare planning. So that's something that I tackle a lot of different topics with my clients, and I don't have time to understand all those nuances. And so having a strong partner is really important for me. A little bit of background about me. I've been a planner for 19 years. So small RA, 380 million assets under management. We serve 250 households. The questions people get typically as I move through these webinars is really, what's the size of my team and what's my tech stack? So it's two advisors, so my partner and I deal with all of the financial planning aspects of our client relationships. My partner deals with all of the investment management that part of the relationship. There's some crossover there too, but really I'm the one who's having the conversations with our clients about healthcare decisions that they're making and how that fits into their overall financial plan. I have two planners and a CSA and operations manager that support me. And as Cole mentioned, the T word, therapy, that's something that over my 19 years of practice, we all learn those conversational skills that are so important when it comes to these big, scary decisions that clients need to make or what they're feeling about money. the biases or beliefs that people hold in their heads. And so we also have a fractional financial behavior officer that we engage with as well. Her background is in therapy. And so if clients are really, really stuck, we end up sending her their way or then her way because she really has that background to really go deeper than we can. But I'm going to share a few conversational tips that have helped guide some of my clients in some of their big decisions. And some of these are ones that may be very familiar to you. And I'll just share a little bit about how we tackle that.
I love it. Emily, are you always smiling like that when you're at your desk working? That's how you just look perpetually when you're meeting with clients or when you're doing planning work, you always look that way, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I keep my camera on Zoom meetings too, because I'm like, oh, make sure you don't have a resting face. So yeah, you have to try to smile through it. Actually, that was actually one of the some of the coaching that I got at some of the conferences. You'll see those booths where they record you speaking, and then they have you watch yourself back, and they're like, you have to
Yes.
smile while you're talking.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I got. Here's what we're going to cover today, guys. We're going to jump into just talking about being an all-in resource, being that comprehensive planner. What does that mean? How do you build healthcare planning into your practice? We're all very busy, so I am a huge, 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 huge fan of having workflow steps, having tasks, delegating what you can, and just building in processes in place to say, okay, client has reached this milestone, this age, we've had this discussion. Now it kicks off a series of events that happen. I'm going to share that with you because, very often if you're kind of dealing more in an ad hoc way of being responsive to client questions that come up, that's great. So if you're able to address healthcare questions that come up from your client base, that's a great way to learn and kind of be that resource to your clients. But I also think really strongly in this world about the opportunities we have to be proactive. So I'm going to talk about some of the proactive based milestone touch bases or ways that we help clients kind of keep on track and stay ahead because they're going to be hit, especially getting closer to the clients that are going on to Medicare. They're going to start getting hit from every single angle about these overwhelming Medicare decisions. And so if you can be in front of that and be that calming voice and that resource for your clients, they're going to be incredibly grateful to you. So just being that person that says, yep, you're going to get a lot of stuff in the mail. You can ignore it. We're going to help you. We have a partner that's going to help you. And here's what you need to know and educating your client based on where they're at. It's a little different, of course, for clients that are going on to the healthcare marketplace or seeking private healthcare insurance. Those are different ones that maybe you can identify ahead of time to say, hey, I'm helping you plan to leave your job next August. Let's talk about the steps that need to happen with your healthcare planning ahead of them. So evaluating COBRA or evaluating other options that are out there, let's put that on a timeline. And I'm going to send you a nudge in May that we can get this figured out together. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about some of the emotions that come from healthcare planning. So sometimes clients get stuck. I just think of clients that get to this stuck point of, I want to make this job change. I want to retire, or I want to have this transition in my life, but I've got these healthcare decisions that one, I've heard that it's incredibly expensive, or I've heard this is really complicated or scary, and now that's a blocker. And so, what we want to be able to do is help our clients live the lives they want, right? So, we're here to help our clients maximize their lives. So, maximize their enjoyment of their lives, maximize their well being, be that calm for them. And so, I think that becomes incredibly important as clients have all these different opportunities to Google things or go to AI chats to be able to have this one source of information that they can then funnel any of those questions through. So I'll talk to you how I talk to my clients about that, about how I field some of those questions and how I stay proactive with their healthcare decisions that they're going to encounter at different points. Every single client has healthcare decisions to make, right? So we need to figure out how do we fit into that conversation? Where does that fit into our practice? So we're going to talk about some of the planning techniques that come into healthcare planning. I'll share with you a little bit about how we do it. Not to say that everything that we do is the right way, but just want to share with you some of the perspective of I consider myself incredibly organized, and this is something that I pride myself on being that all-in resource and a proactive advisor to my clients. I'd like to share with you a little bit about what we do. I'm going to share with you a couple of common case studies. So things that I'm going to share with you three specific examples of where kind of healthcare planning comes in and calms a relationship and calms a client down, you're likely going to recognize some of your own clients in these examples because they're very common. And when I thought of them, like, man, there are like 6 examples I can think of that fit this one kind of trope here. So I'm going to talk about how do we follow through, how do we set ourselves up to be that proactive planner, and then just how to market yourself. So I actually built my original book of business from webinars and events. Right now, I market in a different way, but my most popular event, webinar, seminar that I give or gave was basically Medicare 101. So this is an area that people are really confused and just want this kind of source of calm when it comes to some of those different decisions. So helping to educate people that brought clients in the door. So talk about Social Security, Medicare decisions, or just overall healthcare decisions. Those are all things that I'll talk about marketing through LinkedIn, YouTube, webinars, events, things like that. Those are just some ways that you can put yourself out there. And also, just in this world right now, where a lot of leads, I don't know if you're getting this too, we have a lot of leads coming to us from AI. So we have different AI tools that are pointing clients our way, and clients are being really specific. Prospects are being really specific about what they need. Hey, ChatGPT, I'm making these decisions around retirement. I want somebody to help guide me through these decisions, and I don't know what to do about healthcare. And can you help point me to somebody who can help me with that? So they're going to then try to match to what are you writing about? How are you marketing yourself out there? And how do you attract the people that are asking these much more specific questions? Because it's not just a Google search anymore of somebody saying, I'm Googling financial planner, financial advisor, retirement planner. They're saying, these are the things I'm facing, and these are the decisions I need to make. Help me find somebody that helps guide me through these specific decisions that I have coming up. So I think that in that world, just being a little bit more specific in your marketing is also useful. So I'm going to share with you kind of how I talk about that with my prospective clients too. So being that all-in resource, I think it's explaining your services. When I talk to a prospective client, I very often share the whole spectrum of all the different types of advisors. And Cole, I'm guessing a lot of advisors on here, ones that you work with, are somewhere on that spectrum of maybe they do some hourly planning or project-based planning or advice only or comprehensive. You get like a mix likely.
Across, yeah, I mean across the board we see a mixture of everything. And so I think giving clients a full overview of what you are doing for them and how you are being compensated for it is important as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's just helping people understand where do you fit in here. So I wanted to show you just some of the signaling that we have on our website specifically that just speak to how do we actually address this? Because when I talk to a prospective client, I do take them through our process, I take them through our service offering, and we have some signals on here that talk about under retirement planning, second one down, Medicare analysis, review, and support. So these are things that we help support our clients through. That's one of the topics. Going down into insurances, health insurance planning review, benefits review. So we have those words actually on our website that state that we help support that. And then down in our referral network here, we have healthcare marketplace, Medicare brokers down here. Although Cole, I don't think you like the word broker. I actually like that you use the word healthcare planner, right?
Yeah, I think, though we can act in a broker capacity, that's a value add, right? Of, working
Mhm.
across the country, but also, we really believe that, like anybody good in the insurance space, that insurance should be advised upon and not sold. And there's a lot of people that will sell insurance to your clients. There's not a lot of
Mhm.
people that will advise upon it. And so, not allergic to the frame broker, but it is, we reference our team as health plan advisors. We try to kind of emulate how an advisory practice would look and act in what we do. So yeah, great question, Emily.
Yeah, and that's how I describe it too, because ultimately in a prospective client conversation, we're wanting to establish pretty quickly on what brought you here. And especially if they prompted AI, could you mind sharing with me kind of the prompt that you used here? What are you seeking? What do you need help with? What are your problems, right? It's just finding out at that intro call, what do we do? Where do we fit on that spectrum? What do we help you with? And what are your concerns? So as I'm kind of filing through the list, I'll say, yep, you mentioned to me that this is a big consideration as you're making this job change, or you're worried about a layoff and worried about healthcare costs. This is something we can help you with. And so that shows up there. And then we also signal, there's additional signaling on who we help. And we have it both on our two niches that we work with our pre-retirees and tech professionals. But we have some additional signaling on right on our website about the kind of common questions that people have. So paying for healthcare before Medicare kicks in, for example. So these are some signals that are telling AI or telling Google search. These are things that we talk about and that we cover. So from an SEO perspective, I think this is important to be comprehensive on your website about what you're covering and what types of decisions that you help with. So just like everything else, preparing for unexpected health costs without draining everything, right? So it's how do you specifically help address those concerns that are coming up? And also SEO, AEO, they're all looking at what blogs you're writing. So if this is something that if you also focus on maybe job changers or so I have that in kind of the tech professional. We've got a lot of that layoff risk. One of the companies my clients work for, they laid off 1,000 people yesterday. So they're concerned about healthcare right now. So it's just helping to meet people with the major concerns that they might have. So we have this all over Medicare timing and healthcare. So all different places on our website just to help out, map out Medicare and healthcare planning. Like if you played a drinking game and you had to drink a shot every time we put Medicare on this one page, you wouldn't be able to work the rest of the day, right? So there's all different questions down in here too that also kind of help guide some of those different decisions. So just wanted to share that when I'm talking to a prospect, I am taking them into our website. I am showing them that this is what I work and I highlight what we work on and I highlight the things that are important to them. So if they're telling me I need help with estate planning, I'm going to kind of clue that in too. But I also want to make sure that I'm showing all of the services that we offer because if they don't happen to ask, but that is a concern that's in the back of their head, maybe they don't realize that's something a planner can help them with.
Yeah, I think Emily, you called out something that's really, really important, both two times during this conversation so far. One was, a lot of times in things we're not the expert in, or we're not the center of, the expert in, I should say. We a lot of times will not bring it up proactively because
Mhm.
Emily, I don't know about you. I don't like talking about things that I'm not an expert in, right? I wouldn't be hosting this webinar with you if I wasn't an expert in healthcare planning. But I think that being the difference between being reactive and being proactive is key. And even
Mhm.
if you just bring it up and you touch on it, a lot of times, healthcare planning as a space within financial services historically has not been well brought up. And
Mhm.
an advisor, when they hear insurance, immediately their brain goes to, life insurance and long term care and disability and all of those things, important financial pieces of the puzzle, but also that, healthcare is that you called it out previously, that I call it the brake screeching, the record scratch moment of like, oh, hold on, maybe I'm not ready. And
Mhm.
so I'm really excited to go through some of these case studies that you'll walk us through as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted a good sized prospective client, now client, I should say. And part of it is taking that client through. These are all the things we cover with you. You might not need this yet, but when you come up on later Social Security, Medicare decisions, we're going to guide you through that step by step. And we have excellent resources for you that are pre-vetted. And so being able to guide somebody through that, the feedback that I got when they hired us was we went and talked to all the big banks. No offense to anybody who works in a bank channel, by the way, we went and talked to all of these big institutional advisors, and what made you different was it felt like you were actually more of a concierge to us. And so part of it is sometimes just illustrating you don't know what those kind of fears are in the back of the head. And we all know there's studies out there about how moving into retirement, people are more afraid of a healthcare event than they are afraid of dying, right? So this is a big concern that even if they don't voice it in the perspective call, that is something that we know is something that is probably kicking around in the back of their heads, or they've probably just coming into this year heard somebody griping about healthcare costs increasing or healthcare and retirement. So that's something that happens as well. So talking to prospective clients, of course, and explaining that's what you do, but also from an ongoing support perspective, finding and identifying opportunities to serve your clients proactively ahead of time. I'm going to give you a little bit of a few ideas around that. But first, I want to talk about I'm going to take you into the head of your clients. And just conversationally, what I like to do just to um, help maybe get everything out on the table and help to then move forward with some of the math. Because when I think of somebody being paralyzed, the most calming thing isn't going to be a spreadsheet. That's going to be part of it. So, as a financial planner, we want to be able to illustrate costs. We want to be able to help show them their financial plan, show them they're going to be okay. But we also want to understand what is it that you're afraid of and what created those beliefs in your head. And so it's just like very often in your practice, if you are gathering a money history from your clients and understanding maybe big financial events that have happened in their past, or some of the beliefs they have in their head about money that maybe came from how their parents talked about money. In my grandparents' household, you can have love or you can have money or, right? So there's sometimes these beliefs that people carry in their heads, and this comes into healthcare planning as well. So we want to understand what are people concerned about. So asking that history, did you see, are your parents retired? Have they moved through healthcare decisions? How did that go? Or do you have a family member? Do you have a horror story back there or a situation that went really well? Tell me you know, what's your experience with this topic? What are you worried about personally? I don't like asking people directly about their own health diagnoses because I think that makes people really uncomfortable. It's like, hey, Cole, get naked right now on the call right now, right? So it's sometimes though they're willing to share that with you to say, if I just ask generally about like those the topic, sometimes they'll take us there themselves. Like, oh, you
Yeah.
know what? In my family, with this family history, and I'm worried about these larger healthcare costs down the line.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think
this, yeah.
Emily, you made a great call out. I don't know if you're a Tim Ferriss fan or not, but he has this thing called fear setting, right?
Mm,
And a lot of times, fear setting is the path in which you take to get to goal setting, right? Of
yeah.
what are you most afraid of?
Mhm.
And it's oh my gosh, well, I don't want to end up like my parents did, or
Yeah.
I'm concerned because somebody told me at pickleball that health insurance for them is $3,000 a month, and it's like, well, those are valid fears, but if you ask what the fears are, then you can get to the root of what am I most uncomfortable about,
Mhm.
and if you can set the fears, then you can begin to set goals in which overcome those. And so I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, exactly. And Julie made a great point. It's like money scripts. Money scripts are those unconscious beliefs that we have maybe in our heads. And some of them are, some of the statements that I've heard clients say are, oh, you never want to go onto the marketplace for healthcare, or you have to wait till 65 till you're eligible for Medicare in order to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And people get these fixed beliefs in their head that then drive all of these different decisions. And again, our job is to help our clients maximize their lives and their enjoyment of their lives and kind of see these possibilities they didn't realize existed. And so uncovering those, I love your framing of that, Cole. I think that's a really good point. So just uncovering what those fears and expectations are. I haven't come up with a better name for it, but I have a meeting. I call it the oh shit meeting. And it's literally asking clients like, tell me all the things you're scared about happening because we stress test financial plans against tax increases or inflation or poor market performance or healthcare event or longevity or whatever it might be. And so I like to try to understand. I don't want to assume the things that clients are scared about because sometimes there might be something that we didn't even think about. So figuring out what that might be and also just normalizing it. So, and I don't mean to be flippant with it, but healthcare is just a cost in your plan. It's not, it's just another bill that you're paying. And sometimes we feel a little bit differently about it. Money is supposed to be fungible, right? Dollars worth of dollars worth of dollars worth of dollar. But I sometimes have people trying to just optimize their entire lives around healthcare planning, like keeping their
Yeah.
income low or trying to plan. It's just like, well, if you kind of lived a little bit and you took more money out and you traveled a little bit more, your healthcare is gonna cost more. But you
Yep.
also went on an African safari, right? And bought a new car and. So I think part of it is trying to maybe normalize the fact that healthcare costs just exist in the plan. We've built the costs in. We can build more buffer in there. It's part of life is building in that healthcare cost. So it's understanding what those fears are, addressing those, being able to map that into the plan. So if they're overly worried about any particular additional costs, my mom just got a hearing aid last week. So I kind of saw what that cost structure looks like. So it's understanding what are the things that maybe we can map in. So if I had a client with that experience, maybe I make a hearing aid tile in their plan that I can then turn on as a cost. It's a cost. It's a unit of information that goes into a financial plan. So sometimes it's just a little bit of level setting it and taking the emotion around the idea of paying for healthcare.
Yeah, I think Emily, you called out something that's really, really important is that many times, most times, someone will pay more for their health insurance when they retire than when they were working, right? If they have coverage through a job, the employer is subsidizing it in most cases, and they get this fear built in of well, it's going to be really, really expensive. And you talk about things that they set up as their money script of, well, I can't leave because health insurance is going to be really, really expensive. And
Hmm.
reality, what they want to know is not, you've summarized it very well, is not a matter of is it going to be more? It's you could say until you're blue in the face, Emily, you could spend $7,000 a month on healthcare needs and you are going to be fine. The financial plan would be fine. But until they hear, hey, you're going to enroll into the Anthem 3500 Silver Pathways HMO with, they don't feel comfortable until they have some of that. They've solidified a strategy and it answers just that question of, am I going to be okay? Yes, it's more expensive than what you are paying through your employer currently. But what is early retirement worth to you? Right, the safari in Africa, you miss out on that if you're continuing to work, et cetera, et cetera. So I love it. The big question of, am I going to be okay?
Yeah, exactly. And from a money scripts perspective, so that specifically, like if you're talking about the Dr. Brad Klontz like money scripts, it's the money vigilance aspect of saying like, oh, I'm like being a little bit more frugal and making these smart financial decisions. Sometimes it's just like don't turn on the math yet. Let's talk about, let's vision your life. How do you want your life to go? How do you feel about that? I just talked to a client this morning who wants to cut down to 32 hours a week and then kind of scale down from there. She was worried about healthcare costs. We talked
Sure.
about when does she need to make healthcare decisions based on this coast strategy down into
Mm-hmm.
retirement? And she kept asking about the healthcare costs and the money and like that aspect of it. And I just said, okay, what do you want? So how does it feel right now to work? And what would going to 32 hours mean? And what does going to 20 hours mean? And when do you ideally want to retire? Tell me what your life looks like. What are some things you
Mm-hmm.
can accomplish if you're not working 40 hours a week? And so sometimes it's just understand the fears, understand the biases, understand what are we trying to accomplish here with your plan, and then mapping in those costs and then doing that in an efficient way. So there are, of course, there's healthcare planning around keeping income lower and picking up some subsidies. There's Medicare IRMA planning, of course. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
ways to make that better, but we want to mold the plan and mold the math around the goals and the life because otherwise none of our clients are going on African safari, right? So we want to help make sure that those things happen too. So I don't mean to be flippant about the costs because they're high and it's a stressor and I get it, but it's also something that we want to plan around. So want to normalize the fear. I'll talk about one step at a time. So I'm going to show you a timeline that I create for my clients that just helps them say, all right, we're not worrying about September. We're talking about we're in March right now, right? What's
Mm-hmm.
happening in April? What's happening in May? We don't need to make every decision right now. And we've got a step for that, by the way, right? So for each of those time periods. I want to talk about how we plan for contingencies. That comes from the fear planning. So, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? So,
Mm-hmm.
what if you have extended long-term care needs? What if you have a health diagnosis that follows the path of your family? What if healthcare costs go up? What if subsidies go away completely? What if, right? So, we want to kind of understand what that could look like. And also, the what ifs around Medicare IRMA planning, a lot of times people think they're going to spend what they're going to spend and then they choose to spend more. So, what if we
Mm-hmm.
spend more? And life is lumpy. What if you're going to take a bigger distribution out to purchase a vehicle or go on vacation or purchase a second home? And that's going to trigger maybe some additional healthcare costs. How do we plan for that so that is just a factor in the plan? That's just a part of it. Or how do we pre-plan those events? So it's just the better that you can get to know your client and take a good history, take good goal setting, good fear history. What did you call it, Cole? Fear
Fear,
planning?
fear, yeah, fear setting. Yeah,
Fear setting. I like it. I like it. I'm going to start using that.
there you go.
So making sure that that's not what's going to keep clients from what they're ultimately doing. So I like to come from that framework and then come in and say, okay, how do we smooth out those spikes in income and reduce healthcare costs later? Or how do we do Roth conversions up to a certain line to reduce healthcare costs later? So there are things like that that we can maybe plan around, but also I sometimes have clients who are like so hyper focused on keeping their healthcare costs so much lower from 62 to 65, for example, because they want to qualify for subsidies, but then that's going to trigger higher Medicare IRMA surcharges later, right? So
Yep.
we want to just make sure that you're planning in kind of a more holistic way. So we always plug all of the client data into a financial planning software and we map out what future impacts and costs are going to be to help drive those decisions down today. So
Yeah.
um, just looking at that whole picture. Just wanted to share with you just some of the things that we think about just specifically in planning. We use, I mentioned earlier that everyone asks about tech stack and that I didn't share what we have. We use Right Capital for financial planning, but eMoney, Money Guide Pro, all of the same tools will typically have their set assumptions. We use the assumptions that Right Capital gives us about pre-Medicare out-of-pocket costs per person. Medicare, we always have the setting estimated based on AGI. I want to just mention this to you just in case, like the small cohort or the cohort that tends to be with us today, if you are using Right Capital, for example, that's not the automatic setting. There's actually a dollar amount in there. And I go into the plan when I'm building the plan and have it estimated based on AGI so that the financial plan will move those costs based on the goals that you have plugged in or the spikes in income or moving up into a different tier from a surcharge perspective. I also, based on the fear question, I will put in buffer if it'll calm the nerves of our clients. So I don't want to add a lot of extra potential healthcare costs into the plan and throw the plan off if that's not what reality might be. But if they're ultra worried about it and stuck and paralyzed, sometimes just adding that additional cost buffer can be useful as well. And then we also want to talk about at the same time, just talk about down the line, long-term care costs. We look at the final 2 or 3 years of their lives, and in today's dollars, about $75,000 a year on top of their normal typical expenses. So those are just some settings that we tend to use here. I want to talk about 3 different cases. And I want to take you a little bit into just a couple of logistical things that we do to actually do that proactive healthcare planning for everybody. So, Cole, have you ever dealt with an entrepreneur who is scared to leave their big job with healthcare? You ever run into anybody like that?
100% of the time, Emily. I know we've worked with your clients that have been in this scenario where it's,
Yeah.
whether it's a tech job or just the comfort of W-2, right? Hey, I know
Hmm.
exactly what I'm being paid. I know when it's coming. All of those things, and health insurance can be a big nut to crack, or one that they let go until the very last moment, and it derails the whole idea of jumping ship. And
Hmm.
so, yes, entrepreneurs all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this is we're running into both with just the layoff fear scenario of what if I lose my job and lose benefits, and also I think of more of a proactive planning perspective of clients that I have that want to step away from the job with benefits and become an entrepreneur or consult or do something different and have healthcare being that blocker. And so, this one client that I'm thinking of in particular, who's 47 years old, and he basically said, I worked at these big companies. I feel like I'm at the mercy of these layoffs that happen. I don't have any control over my job anymore. The jobs are changing significantly after a big layoff. It's just absorbing more work seems to be the norm. And I asked him, I said, what do you expect is going to happen from a healthcare perspective? Like, what do you expect the cost to be? And he said, well, I heard it's like $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And he said, it just feels so painful to pay that. And so what it actually ended up being is he left his job to consult. And so he went on to Cobra through the end of that year and then in open enrollment enrolled into a plan that ended up actually costing 300 a month. And then just this year flipped up to 800 a month because he's earning more
Yep.
now. So it's just tied to that income. So sometimes the math is the calming element, but understanding what number are we anchored to right now? What do we actually want to do? So what are all the benefits to your life and the flexibility and the balance? So at 47, so he has 2 kids that are still in school and he wanted to be able to enjoy that time with them. He also worried about it's not just healthcare for me, it's healthcare for my family.
Yeah.
And so worrying about and feeling like I need to be this provider that has good benefits. And he worked for a company with very good benefits. And so just feeling like this is something that I'm bringing to the table as my role in this family. And so just being able to kind of solve that was kind of that like key in the lock that allowed him to move forward and actually start his business. So he started out consulting and then ended up buying a franchise and now operates that as well as some consulting back to his industry. And so
It's
that's
awesome.
a success story that I think healthcare planning was a piece of some of that work. Um, Middle one, early retiree. So, second bullet point has always been told to wait till age 65. Cole, you've never heard that, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you think that healthcare planning is not ingrained into what we do, as just human beings in the United States, we are wrong, right? Because if you look to any financial planning software, it's always going to, 9 times out of 10, it's going to put the milestone at 65. Well, what
Hmm.
happens at 65? You get health insurance, right? And so health insurance being built into our, our as a country, right? Being built into, well, you wait until 65 to retire because you can turn on health insurance, right? So the early retiree, there's 40 million people between 55 and 64. There are 12,000 people that turn 65 each and every day. And there's a lot of folks that, Emily, the whole reason I wanted to start Move Health was because I watched my in laws go through this exact scenario, right? Their advisor didn't have a great resource, gave them a very prohibitive cost analysis for what healthcare costs would look like from 59 in their case to 65. And I love it. So go through this case because I love hearing these stories. We always say we love helping people quit their jobs,
Hmm.
and so this is a fun one.
Yeah, yeah. So I had this client for a while, and I'd always talk to her, like just kind of jokingly about like, you can retire now, like you're in work optional territory now. And she just said, no, no, I'm going to keep working. And um, I didn't really fully understand what was holding her back. She hadn't voiced that the healthcare planning was that piece of it. And then she had shared with me, so her scenario was she had this is actually kind of one element that's similar to the prior case study. She had several people leave the company, and her leader, the owner of the company, was kind of checked out. Like he was retired, semi-retired himself. He wasn't coming in and being supportive. So she was kind of taking on like CEO responsibilities. So she was really supposed to have more of a COO HR kind of responsibility. And she just ended up taking on more and more and more of the operational administrative work of her company. And she was just complaining to me. It was a bad day. It was Valentine's Day. So I had joked with her, like, come be my Valentine. Let's have a meeting. Let's talk. And I remember her coming to the meeting and just being miserable.
Mm.
I'll never forget her just venting. And she's like, can I please just vent? I'm having a really rough day, and just sharing with me about just how things were going at work. And so this is when I pushed back on her a lot more about retire now. I like what's keeping you here? You have the resources and the ability to retire. Her expenses were nice and low. She'd been a great saver. She'd built up a nice portfolio. The math worked beautifully. And I told her all along that she had the ability to leave employment, actually, I think from maybe age 56 to that point. So she'd heard for 4 years in a row of me doing the projection and saying, okay, your plan still looks great. How are you thinking about retirement? And what feels right to you? And she shared with me that her girlfriends had always said, you have to wait until age 65. So she had that like stamped in her brain as just that's when you retire. That's when you retire. And so coming up with more of that personalized plan, talked to her about healthcare. We had a healthcare meeting, and she put in her notice the very next day. And it was so rewarding because I think sometimes, a lot of times, when we're trying to move our clients to action, we talk to them for a long time about something. I have a client who just closed on a beach condo last week that we started talking about in 2022. So it's just like, is this possibility? Can I afford it? Do I really want one? Sometimes it takes years to get clients to buy their dream car, or, move to a bigger home, or whatever it might be, right? And so I just assumed we were going to have a conversation, we were going to plant some seeds, and then, maybe I can bring this back up with her later. And I remember thinking in the meeting, okay, make sure you touch base with her in 30 days, 60 days, see how she's feeling about work. Did things get better? But I got an email the next morning just saying, I put in my notice. So it was just one of the most immediate turnarounds I've seen. And it's just really nice to check in with her now and just see her, just the relief of her being in retirement and filling that time and just enjoying life with her grandkids, and just what she's been able to do now that she doesn't have that constant stress hanging over her. I feel like it's just a life-changing moment that we have the ability to help support our clients with.
Yeah, I think there's also a prevailing thought, within this early retiree segment of if it's not wait till 65, it's wait till 63 and a half in order to,
Yes.
get Cobra for 18 months and ride that until Medicare. And one of my favorite stories was watching someone, I don't get to work with clients all that often too much anymore, but watching a client who I was talking with, and you kind of watch the stress level kind of go down as we begin to plan for these things, right? We're taking the flashlight, we're shining it in the dark corner. There's no boogeyman there, surprise. and watching him go, I think we're probably going to jump a little bit sooner than 63 and a half. And they ended up bumping it up by 2 years, right? And so for
Mhm.
them, what are those 2 years worth? And, would that have been uncovered had we not talked about this? So I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. I will sometimes do that as I'll kind of like hitch them from that anchor of 65 by selling them on 63 and a half, knowing that I'm going to go back in and try to resell 62 or 61
Yep.
in certain cases, because sometimes that's once you kind of break that link, sometimes that's useful too in these pre-retiree cases. So just helping people design their lives the way they want to and execute on it. And it's such a big lift to be able to solve that one big fear and one big problem. And then very commonly retirees. So the case that I thought of here is I had this client who also for quite a long time was financially in good shape to retire. And he felt so overwhelmed and so avoidant. I had offered to just talk to him and pre-plan Medicare. And finally, I just said, we've got to just go through and have a consultation. So even though you don't feel ready to address it, you feel like this is overly complicated, this feels overwhelming to you, let's just have a conversation and just see what Medicare is going to look like for you and understand really the A, B, C's, and D's that you need to maybe know, kind of moving into that decision. And so um, the retiree I'm thinking about in particular, I just think of his affect in the meeting. He was just so overwhelmed and avoidant. It's that like shoulders rise up. And so I just said, let's just have a meeting. Let's just get together. Let's do Medicare 101. And I'm not going to mention well, maybe I'll mention the person on your team. I'm obsessed with Lindia Cunningham and Move
Ah,
Health. And
love it.
she's so amazing. And she got on a call with his client and she just said, I'm just going to educate you. And she just was so informative, so educational, so helpful. He just said, okay, like now I know I can ignore some of the things that I'm kind of being hit with or some of the beliefs that I have. It is more complex. So for a client to try to understand, well, what fits in under inpatient care like Part A or outpatient care, Part B, where does the supplement or advantage plan kick in? And what else do I need to do with a drug plan and vision and dental and whatever else that might kind of come into play? It was just so calming to walk through. So for a lot of my clients, I'm comfortable personally doing a one-on-one conversation. That's one of the things that back in my history, I decided this is something I want to at least learn enough about to create that timeline and help clients with some of the fears that they have and in some of the decisions they need to make. So I'm comfortable kind of doing that little bit of that 101 convo. So I've done that very recently with a client who's retiring at the end of the year, just to say, let me just share with you what we're going to expect later this year and some of the decisions you're going to make. But also, Move Health has the ability to come from that place of education and support to help your clients with understanding all those different pieces and what decisions they need to make and what that right piece is to kind of click in is that um, additional supplement or advantage plan that comes into.
Yeah, I think it's important too because again you can say it until you're blue in the face like this will be fine. Here's Medicare 101, but until they hear it from a secondary or a third party, I should say, they're going, oh, okay, this is real. This is what I thought it would be. These are corroborating, and so just a lot of times it's just again turning the light on in a dark room and being like, hey, this is not nearly as scary as you think it's going to be. So
Yeah, and bringing that expert. So on my website, it's I have that referral network. I have that expert. I've got that tool in my tool belt that can help support those decisions as they come up and make them less scary. So some of the follow through, I want to show you a couple pieces or things that I do for my clients. So one thing that I like to do is once we uncover that timeline, I like to create a resource template for my clients. And I email that out. I put it in our CRM system. We happen to use WealthBox, if any of you are familiar with this. And I also put it in their financial plan as part of their timeline. So I go through and basically say, where are we kind of in the retirement year, for example, or job change or whatever it might be. What are some of the different decisions that you'll need to make, and what are some of the resources that are going to be useful for you? So, at what time do you sign it? This person turned 65 and then later retired a little bit further in the year. So we took care of Part A enrollment. We mark that as done. I have guided clients through that process. So that tends to be, I like to be a little bit more white glove. And also, that's just helped me understand different systems. So I will like join a Zoom call with my clients and tell them to share their screen as they're walking through that process because sometimes they get stuck on the littlest question. And um, although I can't like fill this all out for them, I can kind of just say, this is what they're asking for here. This is how you can complete it and you can go ahead and move forward. So the resources that I send to them, Medicare and You Handbook is fantastic. That resource is something that clients can then, I like to send the PDF version because they're able to then search for like chiropractic care, for example. I also send over the checklist. So this checklist, and you guys are going to get this too, this checklist here is what to have in front of you when you're sitting down to do your Medicare enrollment. So I'll typically tell clients, yep, happy to help you walk through it. Here are two resources that you can have and cite. These are two things that you want to have on here. So this is a template that I just create. So I have in my CRM system, retirement timeline template that creates, and then I just change all the dates and the resources and the names, all of that for each of my clients. So then we put in when do they need to enroll in Part B or make another move. So we take care of that step. We talk about when their retirement is. There's other things we want to do, right? Let's look at monthly expenses. Let's talk about other things. Pulling together Medicare card information, meet with Move Health, like all of those different steps we have in here and later on enrolling in Social Security, those types of things. So I have the same thing in our financial planning website. I create a note in their template here. So again, we use Right Capital. Everyone does this. But this allows us to kind of then have those steps in here. So meet with Move Health, for example, is in here as well. So when do we need to do what in order to get this all accomplished based on their age, their timeline, their birthday, what needs to happen? So part of the education is for enrollment in Medicare, for example, just letting them know what is that window of time and what are the consequences for missing that window. But also, let's just take it one step at a time, one bite-sized piece at a time. So I create also some tasks for myself in here. So I just went through earlier this year, I pull an age-based milestone list from our CRM system that just says, who's everybody that's turning 65 this year? And I go down the list and say, okay, this person's continuing employment, so they're going to stay on a group healthcare plan. They have more than 20 employees. This person is going on to they're going to retire later this year. We need to do some planning around that. Or this person is retired. Here's their window. Here's their timeline. And so I did a series of proactive outreach to my clients that were all reaching age 65. So I think there were 13 emails in total I needed to send this year. But what I do is pull that list before the start of the year. I have different age-based milestones that I hit with clients with different topics, like doing catch-up contributions in a 401k or HSA. So these different key ages that we meet, or your kid's turning 18 and we need to look at a healthcare power of attorney for them. So this is one age-based milestone that I create as a task for myself to touch base with my clients and just make sure I'm documenting in our CRM system what's their plan. So they've reached this milestone. What's their healthcare plan this year? And when do we need to readdress something? And how do I need to set up my next step with them? So referring them out potentially. We also have several steps in each of our workflows. I'm a big workflow person. So you can kind of see over here on the screen, I have all these different workflows for all these different events. So these are just series of steps that we create for our clients for us to follow through to service our clients. So for example, on the retirement one, we have in here, so potentially if we need to contest IRMA, for example, or nearing age 65, preparing for enrollment education, or if they're not eligible, reviewing healthcare options, for example. So those are all part of the planning steps that we have for each event that our clients are going to face. So I have the same thing I have a workflow for layoffs, is evaluating the healthcare plan and evaluating what healthcare comes into their severance package. When does that end? When do we need to make decisions? When do we need to refer them to Move Health? So creating that the next time you work with a client and help support them through the process, how do you make that a template? So how do you save a good email you just created for your client and how do you template that out? How do you template these tasks? And also, I tag my clients. I have a Move Health tag in our CRM system. So I can click on that and immediately pull up every client that we referred to Move Health, as well as in our Move Health dashboard, we've got the list of all of our clients there too. But this just is right at my fingertips and available for me to be able to reference. Okay, go back to our slide deck here. Okay. So I've got just kind of one more slide to hit here. I mentioned this previously, but wanted to just suggest here that this is a way that I built a lot of my business early on, was offering various webinars, seminars, events. I actually have part of my history. I did employment, or I did enrollment and education meetings for participants of 401(k) plans. And so going out into the 401(k) environment and just giving these group meetings, that's how I learned a lot of topics in this business. So I was in my 20s saying, all right, I need to learn about Social Security. Let me sign up to deliver a webinar and then I'll learn everything about it and jump on. But being able to be that resource, that is a big pull to drive some of that pre-retiree business, or even you can take some of that material and say, I want to speak specifically to tech professionals that are being laid off and worried about healthcare decisions that come. I
Mm-hmm.
want to speak to people who want to become entrepreneurs and start a small business and the healthcare decisions that come with it, or all the decisions that come with it, and healthcare being a piece of it. I want to help pre-retirees kind of make these different Social Security and Medicare decisions and understand the timeline or decisions to make and understand the resources that are available to them. And being that educator has been just a great way to attract clients. Right now, I'm thankfully in a place in my career where a lot of the SEO kind of drives some people to our website, which is why I shared right now. A lot of the signaling that I like to put out there is through our website to be able to say these are the topics that we hit. But then I also spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's where I do a lot of my writing and outreach. And so I write different case studies. So I
Mm-hmm.
will talk about here's how I help my client. So being able to bring a healthcare scenario into play, if you have a really good meeting or a very good outcome with a client, writing that case study down and saying, I can create content around this. So I can go out here and say, I helped this client who was laid off or wanted to become an entrepreneur or wanted to retire at 60 or wanted to retire at 65 or whatever it might be. I helped them move through this scenario and helped them make these different decisions and feel calm. And these are some of the planning techniques that I use. So that I feel like is the biggest attractor when I've had clients, brand new clients, book a meeting, a prospective client book a meeting, and they cite that they booked it off of LinkedIn. I asked them, was there a specific post or what drove you to book a meeting? And very often it's a case study to say, hey, you wrote this post about your client who called you every single Friday and wanted to check how close he was to a $2 million balance. And because they were trying to hit this milestone before they made this big life decision. And that just resonated with me. And I feel like you would care about me in that way as well. And so there's just different types of content that then drives people to come to you. I wish I liked to do video because I see all these people out on YouTube doing a fantastic job of putting out these videos. It's a perfect format for short or long video, is talking about those case studies or talking about some of those tips and tricks that are out there and putting good information out there. There's so much bad information out there. Cole, have you ever seen a bad TikTok tip?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of them. Like I said, there's a lot of times where there's a lot of people that will sell your client health insurance or some type of something, right?
Mhm,
There's not a lot of people that are advising upon it, and there's YouTube and LinkedIn and the internet's full of hot takes. Everybody loves a hot take because it gets views and all that stuff.
mhm.
Very rarely is the calm, assured voice of saying, "Hey, like there's an option here. There's an option here." The one that's rising to the top of the noise. But I think that you know I will feather in our cap, a lot of the YouTube content that we've done alongside financial planners usually ends up in their top 5 most viewed videos ever, because they're saying, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that my financial advisor or a financial advisor was even talking about these things."
Mhm.
Long gone are the days of just being the investment manager only. You have to be able to do a lot of different things. So yeah, I love it, and we see all kinds of bad hot takes on health coverage all the time. So uh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love it.
absolutely. Not to pick on TikTok specifically, but sometimes some
Yeah,
of the bad stuff comes from there.
for sure.
Yeah, so it's just being that voice of reason out there too. And so putting ourselves out there as planners and as more holistic thinkers and being able to kind of cut through some of that misinformation that's out there and be that resource to clients. So, today, if you kind of think about what are some action steps to come out of this meeting, might be pull a list of clients that are turning 65 this year. What are some proactive touch bases you can make with them? How do you maybe add in some of those signals into your website or other marketing that say, this is a topic I cover and help clients with. So thinking about maybe case studies or just some of the language and signaling in your marketing that can show that this is something you can help with. And, you can do this and Move Health can help you, right? So that ends up being, your wingman or wingwoman in this situation to be able to help support you as an advisor, be that all-in resource to your clients and help solve some of these big fears and big issues that come up.
I love it, Emily. This has been incredible. I'll get you a couple of the questions that were there were a couple that were out there.
Mhm.
One of them, it came from someone specific. Deanne said, "Can you share the name of your fractional financial behavioral officer?" And
Yeah.
so feel free if you want to share it. If it's a closely
Yeah.
held secret, you cannot as well.
Yeah. So we work with Ashley Kwame. Her company's called Beyond the Plan. She's also doing some work with Dr. Megan Lurtz, who I'm obsessed with. So they support our firm and they also have a cohort where they can help with coaching you on. So I do a lot of case consulting with her on, hey, I have this client who is stuck and didn't want to retire because she's scared of healthcare costs. Can you talk me through it? So
Yeah,
she can support advisors as well as her team can meet with clients directly and help them if they're especially stuck
so
with those
cool.
decisions. What broker dealer do you work with? We're an RIA, SEC registered RIA, so we're not broker dealer affiliated.
I love it. Deanne said thank you. Second time she's seen a recommendation for Ashley, so she must be good. That's great, right?
She's good.
Um,
I feel like, yeah, and she's got a good podcast too.
I
She's
love
awesome.
it. I love it. Well, Emily, thank you so much, for joining. Obviously, find Emily on LinkedIn. She's a great follow, and so give her a good follow on LinkedIn. Maybe you can sneak some things to R&D, rip off and duplicate, right? From what she's doing. But Emily, thanks so much for the time today. This has been meaningful, and again, I can sell Move Health until I'm blue in the face and tell an advisor about it, until an advisor sees, hey, here's how it actually works in practice. It doesn't resonate. It's the same. And so, Emily, thanks for making the time to connect on it.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.